It's been years since David passed away, but some secrets never truly die. And when a letter from him surfaces, one that was meant for me, it forces us to confront a past I never knew existed. The truth about the house, about love, and about a woman named Victoria. And the hardest part, learning who really owned our home. The ceramic cup slipped from my hands, crashing to the kitchen floor in 1,000 pieces. The words that followed, heavy with pain, cut through the morning air like shattered glass. I turned slowly, and there he stood, Matthew, framed in the doorway. His complexion was ashen, eyes swollen and red. His voice shook, but it wasn't anger that I heard. It was devastation. "Matthew, what's wrong?" I whispered, barely able to keep my voice steady. He didn't respond at first. Instead, he shook his head, running his fingers through his hair, the same way his father used to do. In that brief moment, it felt like David was right there with us, and the ache in my chest hit me like a wave. Matthew collapsed into a chair, his forearms resting on his knees. "I tried to push it aside, Mom. I tried to keep moving forward, but I can't live like this anymore. Not with this lie." I stepped closer, my pulse quickening. What lie? He finally met my eyes, and for the first time in ages, I saw the boy who used to fill our home with laughter. "I found a letter," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "A letter," my breath caught. "From Dad." Matthew nodded slowly, pulling a yellowed envelope from his coat pocket. "It was hidden in the workshop," he explained. "It's for you." I couldn't move, my knees buckling beneath me. I'd searched that workshop top to bottom after the memorial, gone through every box, every photo, every scrap of our history, and found nothing. But this. "How long have you had this?" My voice was shaky. 7 days, Matthew replied, the words breaking apart as he spoke. "I wasn't sure whether you were ready for it." We stood there in silence for a long moment. The hum of the refrigerator filled the quiet space between us, steady like a heartbeat. "Why are you showing it to me now?" I asked. "Because I'm not ready either," he said, his voice rough. "But I think this letter is the only thing that can help us heal." My hands shook as I took the envelope. The handwriting on it was unmistakable, David's precise, angular script. My name, Margaret, written in dark blue ink, seemed to stand out on the page. I hadn't seen my name written like that in years. I felt as though the world around me had melted away. The ticking of the clock was the only sound, and Matthew watched me silently, concern etched on his face. "I can't open it right now," I whispered. He nodded quietly. "Then we'll read it together when you're ready." "Ready?" The word lingered between us like a question neither of us could answer. That afternoon, I couldn't concentrate on anything. Every inch of the house seemed to pulse with memories of David. The scuff on the wall from when we rearranged the furniture, the faded coffee ring near the faucet, and now this letter. I found myself sitting in his old armchair by the window, the envelope sitting on my lap like a secret waiting to be uncovered. By evening, the sky had turned orange, and Matthew appeared again, standing in the doorway, calmer this time. "Do you want me here while you read it?" he asked gently. "Yes," I said, my voice barely audible. We sat together, shoulder to shoulder, as I tore open the envelope. The paper inside was fragile, the ink faded, and the words were simple, but they hit me like a freight train. "My dearest Margaret, if you're reading this, it means I never found the courage to say what I should have every single day." I stopped, my throat closing up. The words blurred before my eyes, but I forced myself to continue. "I know you'll take care of Thomas like you always have," David's words continued. "But there's something I need both of you to understand before you make any decisions about the house." I frowned, looking up at Matthew. "Decisions about the house?" Matthew leaned in closer. "Keep reading." I turned the page, my hands trembling. The next lines made my heart skip a beat. "The reality is this home was never ours alone. There's something here I never told you. Something I left unfinished. You'll discover it when the time is right." I paused, my heart hammering. Then the final line stopped me cold. "You'll understand when you see her name. Her name." I looked up at Matthew, bewildered. "What does that mean?" Matthew blinked, his face pale. "Whose name?" I flipped the page over, but there was nothing more. Silence enveloped us. "Is there another page?" Matthew asked, his voice small. I shook my head. "No, that's all of—" We sat in stunned silence, staring at each other, both holding pieces of a puzzle that neither of us understood. What does he mean when we see her name? Matthew whispered. I shook my head. I don't know, but inside something was shifting. This letter wasn't just a goodbye. It was a door opening to something more. And then, as I lowered the paper, I noticed something faintly scrawled on the back of the envelope, almost invisible beneath the light. One word, one name, Victoria. I looked up at Matthew, my heart racing. Do you know anyone named Victoria? He froze, his expression unreadable. Yes, I think I might. Who is she? I asked again, my voice tight. Matthew didn't answer right away. He stared out the window, his face lost in thought. I haven't heard that name in years, he said slowly. But I think Dad mentioned her once. Before the accident, he said she helped him finish something important. I sat up straighter. What did he mean? Trying to recall. I'm not sure. I always thought she was just a business contact or maybe someone from the workshop. Victoria. The name echoed in my mind like a haunting melody. That night, after Matthew had gone to bed, I sat at the dining table with the letter once more. The ink now seemed older, as if it had been waiting to be found. I traced David's handwriting with my finger, remembering the first time I'd seen it, 26 years ago, on a message he'd left in my mailbox. Hello, I think this belongs to you. It had been a forgotten scarf, a stranger's warmth, and that's how our story began. Back then, I was teaching painting classes, and David was in charge of facility maintenance. The smell of turpentine and fresh would fill the air as he watched me, like he was cataloging every shade I mixed. You really shouldn't climb that ladder in those shoes, he'd warned, his smile mischievous. Oh, and you really shouldn't distract women holding paintbrushes, I'd retorted, grinning back. We laughed, the kind of laughter that formed friendships before you even realized it. In weeks, we became inseparable. Every morning he'd bring me coffee, always with the same note on the sleeve. Don't forget to breathe. I didn't realize at the time how much I'd need those words later. Years flowed by like a river. We built a home, raised Matthew, shared quiet mornings and loud, chaotic evenings. But love, I learned, has a strange way of changing. It doesn't disappear. It just hides behind obligations. After David's diagnosis, the laughter stopped. Our conversations became lists, appointments, prescriptions, bills, and then one morning he stopped talking altogether. David, please talk to me, I'd begged. He'd smiled weakly. Some things are better left unspoken, Margaret. I hadn't understood what he meant until I found the empty envelope in his desk drawer. It had been there, waiting for me. But when I looked inside, it was empty. So he must have written the letter afterward. The next morning, Matthew found a small wooden box in the workshop. I found this, he said, pulling it from behind Dad's old toolbox. Inside were Polaroid photos, some faded, some crisp, but one took my breath away. It was a picture of David standing next to a woman. Her raven black hair, soft eyes, and the faint smile on her lips. Who is this? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Matthew looked at it closely, then at the background. Don't know, but look at this. I followed his gaze. The backdrop was an unfinished house, bare wooden beams, scattered construction materials. Is that our house? I asked in disbelief. Matthew nodded slowly. I think it is. We spent the day going through the box, finding architectural plans, fabric swatches, even paint samples, all dating back to before David and I were married. But at the very bottom was a folded blueprint, labeled Bennett Residence. And underneath David's signature there was another name, Victoria Winters. My hands trembled as I read the name aloud. She helped design this house. Matthew's expression was puzzled. But you and Dad built this together. I paused, my mind reeling. Maybe there's more to this story than I realized. That night, unable to sleep, I wandered the house looking at everything differently now. The curved entryway, the bay window, the built-in bookshelves. Were these her ideas? Was this her vision? I felt like a stranger in my own life. The next day, Matthew found something else, a small steel lockbox hidden beneath the workshop floorboards. Inside were letters all addressed to Victoria, but none of them had ever been mailed. Each one tore at my heart as I read through them. Dear Victoria, I wish I could explain why I never finished what I promised. You deserved more than silence. Dear Victoria, every time I look at this house, I see your dreams built into its walls. I'm sorry I couldn't complete them the way you imagined. The final letter was different. It was addressed to Matthew. Should I open it? He asked, voice uncertain. I nodded, urging him on. He unfolded the paper and began reading aloud. Son, if I'm not here when you grow into the man I hope you'll become, remember this. Strength isn't silent. I made that mistake for too long. Speak when you love. Speak when you're scared. And if you ever feel lost, take care of her for me. Matthew stopped reading, tears falling down his face. He knew I'd be here, he said softly. I reached out and took his hand. Yes, I whispered, he always did. We sat there in silence, the weight of the words heavy between us. But then, as Matthew gathered the letters back into the box, something slipped out from beneath them. A folded document different from the rest. It was a property deed. And beneath our names, David Bennett and Margaret Bennett, was a third signature. Victoria Winters, I whispered, heart pounding. Matthew read the document carefully. It says the property was co-owned. Signed before you and Dad were married. The truth slowly, painfully sank in. David hadn't just promised to finish the house for Victoria. He'd promised it to her. And when he brought me here, he brought me into her dream. Did you know? Matthew asked quietly. I shook my head. No. Matthew looked torn, caught between loyalty and confusion. Maybe he changed it later, he suggested. Maybe he meant to fix it. But the document didn't lie. The house that had been our home was born from someone else's love story. Later that day, Matthew and I sat in the workshop, sorting through the letters. We read one final letter addressed simply, to whoever finds this home next. It was a simple request. Take care of the garden. The white roses have roots deeper than you can see. They grow best when loved by someone who has known both loss and hope. I smiled through my tears. He wrote this for everyone. Matthew leaned beside me, his voice soft. He left a piece of himself everywhere. I nodded. That's what love does. Outside, the wind moved through the garden, scattering petals across the porch. I looked up at the sky, and for the first time in a long while, something inside me finally rested. David's love hadn't ended. It had simply changed shape, carried forward through us. Matthew closed the window gently. You okay, Mom? I smiled. I am now. As the last light fell across the room, the painting on the wall, Victoria's painting of the house, seemed to glow alive again.